أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من اللعين الشيطان الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا المبعوث رحمة للعالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا لسيما على بقية الله في الأراضين أرواحنا لتراب مقدمه الفداء. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. أوصيكم عباد الله وأوصي نفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل والورع عن محارمه واجتناب عما نهى عنه. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم كتابه المجيد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما أبرئ نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. So once again we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us this opportunity to meet here today on this great day of Friday and remind each other of these important obligations and to remind ourselves of taqwa and the need to purify ourselves, the need to work on enhancing our spirituality, on our iman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in this verse, which is in Surah Yusuf, that وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. This is coming from Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, that I'm not going to exalt myself or put myself above others and exclude myself from these temptations. Of course, he is speaking on behalf of the general people, not him as a prophet, because the prophets are different from other human beings. They are immune from sins, they are infallible. But in the general sense, everyone, every person is not immune from temptations, from going astray, from falling into the trap of shaitan, following the desires. Every human being has got that kind of possibility. Anytime anybody can be trapped by shaitan, he can fall into his trap and follow his way. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. The soul of a person, the self of the person, is always commanding him to follow desires, to go astray, to commit sins. لَأَمَارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. The word used is ammara. So ammara means that this is a superlative form of amir. So ammara, it means that it commands with a lot of force. It pushes a person into these temptations, into following of desires. La'maratun bisu. The nafs of a person does not push him towards what is good. It's always on something that is harmful. Though in the open, it's not harmful because it's decorated for the soul. It looks nice. But the soul of the person follows such kind of things that appear to be very good, appear to be very sweet. But the harm is there in the depth of it. In the inside of those things, there is harm. There is a bad fate. But nafs is always encouraging a person to move towards that. And this is why we are required to work very hard on ourselves. Acquiring the power to control the self is not an easy thing. To be able to suppress the desires of the self, of this soul, is not an easy task. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it to be the criteria for exaltation. He praises the muttaqun because they are the people who have been able to suppress their own desires and to control their own desires. Last time we were talking about one of the powers of the soul, that is quwwa al-ghadabiyya, the power of anger, and the need to control it. And another faculty that is so important to put under control is the power of the shahawat, of the desires. The only people who are successful are those who are able to control their own desires and put them in balance. Because desires in themselves are not a bad thing. It's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's meant to make us progress, to make us advance. Human beings cannot survive without it. However, if one follows the whims of the self and doesn't have any control over the desires, he falls a prey of shaitan and his traps, and at the end he destroys himself. If he doesn't put limits, if he doesn't control those shahwat, if he lets himself follow everything that the soul desires, then he is going to destroy himself. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Shams tells us, وَنَفْسُ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. So Allah says by the soul and how He has made it. He says that قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَاهَا, he is successful, the person who purifies his soul, who works on improving on his soul, controls his soul, he puts limits for it. قَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَاهَا, whoever neglects it and lets it go on with everything, he is in a loss. And this is why it's so important that on such opportunities, we remind each other of this important obligation. It's a day that we need to reflect on how we are carrying on ourselves, on how we should be able to overcome the desires of ourselves. And I want to point to one important thing that I believe is very necessary. For us to be able to win ourselves, for us to be able to save ourselves, we must take an advantage of every single opportunity that comes to our lives that will help us enhance our spirituality and improve on ourselves. And so that we are not the victims of the desires of the self. The self, and nafs, is inclined towards laziness, is inclined towards comfort. Anything that disturbs it, the soul doesn't want to get into it. And whatever thing that seems to be difficult, the soul doesn't want to be there. It will pull you towards rest, towards enjoyment, comfort. And this is the part of the love for this world, hubbud dunya. And this is something sweet to the self. So whenever there's an opportunity for us to work on ourselves, the soul struggles with us, and many times it wins on us. With the help of shaitan and his good programs and entertainment that he gives us, we are taken away from it. One of the great opportunities, or one of the means for us to be able to control ourselves and to be able to be above the desires of ourselves and put ourselves in control is prayers. Salat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed on us prayers. What does He tell us about prayers? He says, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. So prayers are a means of stopping a person from following fahsha. And therefore it empowers you to be able to overcome the self and the desires. Especially when the prayers are performed with good understanding, with presence of the heart and concentration, it makes that difference. When a person really engages in conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and makes those promises, it helps him. It will control him. And this prayer also gets more strength and more power if it's associated with certain attributes. One of them is to perform it on time. Secondly, is to try and perform it jama'at. There is an aspect on the individual person whereby he benefits from it, but there is more spirituality and there's greater achievement when it's performed in jama'at. This is why you find in the riwayat an emphasis on performing salat al-jama'ah. Of course, you can pray alone and it's accepted. You can pray in your office, you can pray at home, you can pray everywhere. But you find that there is a lot of encouragement that you perform this prayer in jama'at. You perform it in the mosque, you perform it on time. So it has got that effect on us. Shaitan and the self, they work against that. It is very difficult for you to wake up in the morning in the cold nowadays to go to the mosque or to join Jama'at. It's a big struggle, even at home. And you need to win over yourself. You need to really struggle. And our call is nothing. If you compare it to those countries where it goes to under zero, below zero, what will happen to us? No. And surprisingly or more disturbing is when I look at the youths are more lazy than the elders. And we need to pay attention to that. We need to really work on that. What is going to happen to the coming generations if they cannot wake up, if they cannot go forth to be in the front lines of Salat al-Jama'ah, to be able to engage in du'as and all that. We get opportunities. Like on Thursday night. This is the beauty in the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, is that you have this kind of things, these kind of programs. You have opportunities to meet, to supplicate, to read du'as together. You look at the powerful du'a of Du'a Kubayl. And look at the attendance of people in the mosque. Nowadays, there are more excuses. There's cold, there's corona, there is this and that, I'm tired, I have this, have that. We find all sorts of excuses to exempt ourselves from it. But we need to feed our souls. We need to work on our souls. This is more important. The same way we pay attention to our bodies. We take care of everything in our physical world, in our material world. We need to pay attention to what is going to develop these souls. And this is what we are told in Surah Al-A'la. بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا. We actually prefer the life of this world on the akhirah because it is what is given preference. So my work is preferred on salat. My work comes first before everything. I can do everything, then later on I will pray. I'll do this and that, then I will pray. On the contrary, everything should be secondary. The priority is our prayers. Should be our prayers, should be the central part of it. When we start neglecting this important obligation, our religion suffers, our spirituality suffers. And then we get into a lot of issues and a lot of problems, and we start looking for a solution. But the solution comes to when we work on our hearts, the central part. You look at the Surah of A'immah alayhim salam. In the middle of the battle, when it's so fierce, Imam Ali alayhi salam is lost. People are looking for him, they find him engaged in prayers. And when they ask him, even at this time, he says, and for what are we fighting? We are fighting because of the prayers. We want to establish prayers. Imam Hussein salawatullah salamu alayhi, in the middle of the battle, surrounded with thousands of enemies. At the time of Dhuhr, he establishes prayers. He establishes Jama'at prayers. Who would think of Jama'at prayers at that moment? When you are surrounded with dead bodies and the arrows are flying from every part, And he still establishes prayers at that moment, Salat al-Jama'ah. Isn't it enough to tell us the importance of this? Now, if we want to protect our youths, we want to protect our families, we want to protect the coming generations, we need to work hard on this. There is no better means that we can give to ourselves than to emphasize on prayers. We'll go to psychologists, we go to these mental, people who can work on our. There's nothing. It is the spirit. I'm not saying rejecting these other sciences. They're important. But if we work on our spirituality, things will come to the center. We lose direction because we lose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Dua al-Arafa, he says, ماذا وجد من فقدك? So what has he found, the one who has lost you? وَمَاذَا فَقَدَ مَنْ وَجَدَكَ? And the one who found you, what has he lost? If you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we should work on. And we have a lot to do. And this obligation on each and every one of us. We should make an effort to engage the families, to engage the children, and we should not look for excuses. We should find ways of overcoming the obstacles. Alhamdulillah, when I'm speaking to this community, Alhamdulillah, you are blessed. You have the means. What would stop you from carrying out this obligation? You can reach the mosque with easiest means. You're feeling cold, you can wear good clothes and keep yourself warm and come to the mosque. Benefit from it. أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل وقرآن الفجر إن قرآن الفجر كان مشهودا. Establish prayers at the time of the declining of the sun, to the time of evening, and the morning recitation. The morning recitation is the Fajr. Fajr, that is witnessed by the angels, by the Malaika, the beginning of the day. You don't have to look for anything else. Start your day with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Start it with prayers. Start it with this connection. This is how we can fight on ourselves. These are Nafs al-Ammara bisu. We have to fight against laziness. We have to fight against, just wanting comfort. Now we feel so comfortable when you are sitting on the couch listening to dua. That's not the way we should pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you really feel in need, you walk to the mosque. You cry because you have needs. A person who is in need doesn't sit comfortably asking. He is really engaged and is disturbed and really lamenting and crying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praying, oh Allah, do we have needs? That's why dua and these prayers, they are a sign that the mukhul ibadah, they are called mukhul ibadah. Dua mukhul ibadah is the brain of ibadah. It's the central part of it because it shows your weakness. It shows you are in need. It shows how you want to be assisted, to be helped. You want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dear brothers and brothers, we need to make an effort. It's not just for the thawab only. This is what builds our own selves and even makes better our world. Where we are connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything will fall into the right place. Where we distance ourselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we fall victims of shaitan and the self, and our lives are disturbed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq that we be able to perform our obligations, to be able to establish this important obligation, the prayers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us maghfirah and grant us tawfiq. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahus samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. اللعين الشيطان الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. لا سيما على بقية الله في الأراضين أرواحنا لتراب مقدمه الفداء. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك، وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين، وصل على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، وصل على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة من الخلق أجمعين، وصل على أئمة المسلمين من ذرية الحسين علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي الباقر، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد بن علي الجواد، وعلي بن محمد الهادي، والحسن بن علي زكي العسكري، والخلف الهادي المهدي. حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل والورع عن محارمه. You can sit for a few minutes, 5 minutes. I've just changed the part of the salawat on the Aimma alayhim salam. I do again advise myself and remind you all of this important obligation on ourselves to acquire taqwa, the need to really work on the self. It's a nafs al-amara bis-su, through different means, through different ways. I had started a discussion on zakat. Unfortunately, my first khutbah sometimes takes me much more time, and I'm left with a few minutes to discuss about this subject. However, I just want to mention one aspect related to the last part of zakat, or the last category of zakat, hoping that the next, inshallah ta'ala, khutbah will be more on zakat than on anything else. So I had mentioned that in the fiqh of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, the common understanding, the common practice is that zakat is on 3 major categories. These are on plants, on gold and silver, and on animals. However, some scholars, such as Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Sistani, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prolong his life and protect him, he mentions another category of zakat that is on business. And not every business, but on goods that are acquired for business. Anything that has been acquired for business. There are conditions, though, on the goods that have been acquired for business to be eligible for zakat. So, these conditions are that the owner, first of all, should be baligh, is mature, and he is sane. This is a condition in most of the obligations. You are supposed to be baligh and you need to be sane. Number 2 is that the property that is acquired for business, the goods that are acquired for business, they reach to the limit called as haddun nisab. There's a limit for every kind of thing that is eligible for zakat. There is this also on goods that have been kept or been acquired for trading. So the limit of this is that it must reach at least the minimal amount of gold that is eligible for zakat. The minimal amount of zakat of gold or that is eligible for zakat is 24 mithqal, okay, pieces of gold that is on currency, that is used as a currency. Okay, and on fidda, 105 pieces of silver. Okay, it's something that is, you can convert through the current means of converting money into the gold or silver. Now, if one possesses the minimal of this from the goods that he has acquired for business, if it is to this level, and with other conditions, then he is supposed to give zakat on them. If they are less than that, then you are not required to pay zakat on them. So what is required is, I have bought, for example, certain goods, and I've kept them. I will convert the value of this into the currency of gold, dinar, or into dirham, the silver. So I can measure it against that. If this reaches the limit of it, how much is the total, then I'll pay zakat on it. This is according to ihtiyat al-wajib. It's not a fatwa, it's ihtiyat. The ihtiyat means that you can refer to other scholars on it if you want, or practice the same precaution. This is condition number 2. Number 3, it must be that the goods were acquired for business. He bought them, and the transaction was done purposely for business. And that it remains with them, the goods remains with him for a period less not than a year, for a full year. In addition to that, the intention should be that he wanted to make profit out of those goods. So just keeping them for future use or for anything. He wanted to trade with them. And number 5, that he is able to do anything on those property, on those goods. And number 6, that the value of it remains the same. So if the goods have been acquired and they were meant for trade and for business, then he must pay zakat at the end of it. Now, how do you pay zakat? To whom do you pay zakat? This will be a discussion, inshallah ta'ala, on in the next opportunity, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us that opportunity, inshallah ta'ala. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us tawfiq and to give us good health and take away from us the corona and all other troubles and problems. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heal the sick and forgive all our sins and all those who have passed away. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.